Welcome, my friends, to Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And listen, maybe this will be an unexpected conversation for you today. Maybe it won't. Maybe this is about the conversations you expect and it doesn't happen the way you fear. That's why I've got Elliot Sands, the executive director of Live Faith First and host of the Live Faith First podcast. And we're going to talk about how to get through this election cycle. The next few weeks are stressful for everyone.
Yeah.
And we're going to take a look at how to get through it and come out of this. I don't know if any of us can come out unscathed, but we can come out with maybe out without the shame and the guilt and the anger. That would help.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you, my
friend?
Some
of our friendships still, maybe, relationship with our siblings or parents, some of those things still intact.
You and I, and in all transparency, Elliot is a dear friend of mine. And we try to get together and have breakfast at least once a month or so, we talk about stuff like this, and that's what we've always sit back and said. And I will be honest, on our last conversation that we had at breakfast, we were talking about this of how do you get through this? How do you do it? And even then, listening to you, I still felt I needed to justify my side. And I walked away from that and I told my wife, she goes, how was Elliot and everything? I said, he was great. I was a complete jerk. And she goes, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything to him. I said, I just felt the need to defend my side. It is hard not to.
Yeah. Yeah. And we navigated that well. Look, we're here again talking. And we don't have a breakfast on the calendar yet, but
in the next week or so.
Right. And
the only reason we don't is because I have teenagers and they go to different schools.
Right.
So it's hard to get everybody at times there.
And football games to go to, all that fun stuff. stuff. So.
And that's what you and I talked about, that for my entire life, and I've been around for a number of decades now. We don't have to pinpoint how many. I've never been a part of an election that wasn't the most important election in the history of the country.
Everyone.
And if the other side wins, we're all going to die.
Right. Right. It is the end of the union, the way we know it, the way we want it. No, it absolutely is. And yet, if you look back over our entire lifetime, every single one, no matter which party won, we navigated out of that, if that's your opinion, or into that, if that's, your side. So, we definitely keeping perspective is important, right? Just keeping a perspective that we've made it through a lot of elections in the history of our country, and we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again.
Through contentious elections, beyond what we could expect. And if you look at the history of the country, we've always been cantankerous, mean-spirited, angry. There has never been an election that was a kumbaya. Everybody was happy. Here's the candidate. Right. Even George Washington. I've said this before. Thomas Jefferson hated George Washington. All right? And just despised him. And Washington had his detractors. There's no one that's, listen, you and I are both Christians. Perfect person was Jesus. They had no problem finding a mob who'd kill him.
Right. They still found a reason to put him on a cross. What's interesting, because I love that we talk about that, where like we have every election is contentious. Every election we're mocking the other side. I mean, look at the caricatures that you would see in the Sunday morning newspapers or the political funnies, right? The political cartoons, where just making fun of. You can go all the way back to George Washington, all the way up to George W. to Obama. That's been part of who we are. We mock the other side. What's weird now, though, what's different now is that we are, as Americans, we are emotionally more divided than ever. Like, if you look at actual political positions, our political positions aren't as far off as they've ever been. Like, they're pretty, it's just the normal differences that we have and how we go about deciding how we want to approach our world, right? But what we've done is we've created this us and them, this othering, this kind of dichotomy of, if you're on the other side, I have to hate you. It's not so much I have to disagree with you. And that's one thing. It's one thing to say, I disagree with you, Gary. I don't think you're thinking about this right. At least the way I think about it isn't the same as you think about it. And that's one thing. But it's one thing, another thing for me to say, oh no, Gary is evil because he thinks that.
That's right there. To me, that is the biggest difference. I don't remember in the history of my lifetime ascribing an evil intent on whoever my political opponent is. And I say this, I get so tired of caveats, but they're necessary in today's society.
Yes.
I say this on both sides. Both sides ascribe this intent of evil. I don't remember Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter or Nixon or and any even with Rockefeller. Anybody's old enough to remember Rockefeller, and I'm not. I just remember the political things. They literally thought he was going to start a nuclear war, not because he was evil, because he thought the other side was. The communists were war. And he was a war hawk. But they didn't say he was this evil American who should be stopped. It was just he was going to put us in more danger.
Yeah,
that's where it's changed to me. How about you?
Yeah. And I think the irony of it is that both sides see the other side's equally evil.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
So if you look at it, the Democrats and the Republicans, the Reds and the Blues, they both think that the other side is out to destroy the nation, that if they win, they will. So it's almost ironic that everybody thinks everybody on the other side is just out to destroy the country, when the reality is it's not like 50% of the people who vote want the nation to go away. Like, we want it to continue to be great, and we're just voting in the way that we think it's going to continue on well. I mean, depending on what side you sit on, if you walk through my neighborhood, there's a lot of signs out right now. And if you we're in a Democratic state, right? So if you are Republican and you walk down my neighborhood streets, you would think that everybody else out there must be sacrificing children because they have to be evil. Whoever's behind the door that has that sign, they are an evil person, right? And the fact of the matter is every 4th of July gathering I've gone to, or every kind of community thing I go to, really lovely people, really, really nice people. So behind that lawn sign probably is a really nice person that you would actually get along with if you actually had a conversation with them. And I think that's where we start to miss it today, is that we just think, oh, that lawn sign means that person is evil. Unless, of course, you agree with the lawn sign. And then you're like, that's my people right there. And so, I think for us, how do we humanize people on the other side is a really big deal. And just realizing that for the most part, we're all just trying to get home every day, have a little bit of peace, get up the next morning, make sure our kids make it to school, and just survive. Like, most of us, that's what we're trying to do. A little bit of peace, a little bit of survival. Let's just make it through another day. Not out to destroy the country.
Well, and that's what I say about when people get so upset about the election. And I try to remind myself, and listen, I've got my political opinions, and I get, oh, what are they? Just as bad as anybody. And I am, ever since our conversation that we've talked about it, I have tried to take more of the approach you had. And we're gonna go into that, about some of the approaches that you, and I think they're very worthwhile. My ask is, question your side first.
There you go.
There, on my political opinions, I'm not happy with the people who represent mine the most. I'm not. There's things I wish, no, I don't like that. I think that was wrong. I don't think we should approach this that way. I don't like the way we do that. Right? And do they hit some of our buttons? Yes, that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. The problem I get, and I am learning to try to adjust, is how many people are out there whose it's my way, right or wrong. As if my side says this, then I'm all in. Right. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said, listen, they were belittling something. And I said, if this happened or this will happen under the opponent, then you would be opposed to it. But because this happened or will happen under your person, then we're good.
Yeah, you're okay with it. Yeah.
And that's where my brain just goes, wait. Right, you're not being honest with yourself. And I guess that's what I need to, because I try to be honest with myself, and to be honest with myself, I'm not good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we could get there, where if you could question your side first, you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have a discussion. You don't have to do this. But look on your side and go, okay, am I good with everything they're saying right here?
Right.
Do I see where there's holes in this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And to add to that, to write down 5 good things or think of 5 good things that the other side is doing well. Like, and what that starts to do is it actually starts to bring this kind of realistic, okay, my side's not getting it 100% right. And the other side's not getting it 100% wrong. Even though I'd really like to think they are, I actually kind of like that. And our challenge now is that we've become so tribalized around our political party that for us to vote against our, and look, I just use that word, against. If we voted for the other party, that somehow we are betraying, the party that we normally ascribe to. And I do that. I mean, it's pretty much like, okay, is it my letter? Is it the R? Is it the D? Then that's what they get my vote, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's not that simple. It can't be that simple because, like you say, every side is getting a little bit right. Every side is getting a little bit wrong. And so realizing that should humble us a little bit. It should make us go, okay, let me not get so riled up because maybe my side's wrong there. And that's okay. That's okay. Because we know that not one side is going to get it perfectly right. So yeah, I love that.
I had a discussion one time with a friend of mine who is very, very, and I have friends on both sides who are, and I mean, not hard, but hard, left and right.
Yeah.
And I remember just having a conversation with one time, and they said they wish they could just get rid of the other side. They could snap their fingers and get rid of the other side.
Yes.
And I said, do you realize that if you did that, if you snapped your fingers and got rid of the Democrats, or got rid of the Republicans, your party, whatever's left, would split to take over the vacuum.
Right.
So if you're far left, some of your left-wing guys would go, no, we don't need to be doing that or going that far. Right. And your right side, you get rid of the Democrats. No, we don't need to be yet doing that to people. We don't need to be setting that up as a standard. Right. It would automatically fill the vacuum. So you would never get rid of it. It would just continue to split. It would be, what's when cellular splits, when how cells reproduce. Same thing with political parties.
Right. No, that's absolutely it. And it's amazing the stats where people, they don't want to live in neighborhoods with people from the other side. They don't want their kids to marry somebody from the other side. Kids don't want college students don't want roommates of people from the other side. Like, we've gotten to this place where we define people by their political affiliations. Like, if you tell me what letter R or D or I, independent, right? I'm gonna just put you in a box. And if you're with my side, then we're good. If you're with the other side, then I am suspect of everything that now comes out of your mouth or whether or not you're even a good person. And I'd prefer, my life would be better if you weren't in my neighborhood, if my kids didn't marry you, if, all of those things. And so it's,
just take out the word politics and put in racism. Right? Because what it is political racism. It's not based on anything other than that it gives me the okay to hate you.
Yep.
And discriminate against you. And it's both sides. Let me say that again. When I talk about, I'm both sides. And it's heartbreaking. But it's also horrifying.
Yeah. No, it's we find ourselves in a really interesting place in our country right now. And I'm going to bring out one other nuance that I think plays into this, and it's our loneliness. We saw a couple of years ago, the Surgeon General came out and said that we're having an epidemic of loneliness in the United States. Even San Mateo County, right here in the Bay Area, a county emergency around loneliness. We're isolated. We're alone. We don't have community. And so it's interesting when you look, we find our community wherever we can. And that ends up being in our political affiliations for some people, right?
Yeah.
And then can you imagine if your only affiliation was what you saw at the, the conventions, right? What you saw there or what news feeds you read, and that if you oppose that, if you went away from that, that you would be ostracized from even the community who you may not have actual interaction with, but you know that you have people out there. So even right now, our loneliness plays into this political polarization, our tribalizing around our political parties. And so there's a lot of really interesting things working together in society right now. And I will go further to say one of the ways to get out of this is to get to know somebody from the other side. And I will say the other side, and right now we're talking about politics, but that goes for every other divide in our society, whether it's ethnic divides, the socioeconomic divides. We make so many assumptions about people who we don't know because we don't know them. And if we took a moment to talk to somebody from whatever other side it is for you, you might be surprised about how much you have in common, about how much commonality is there. Now, there will be differences, but there will also be a commonality. And when we bridge those gaps and find that commonality, now all of a sudden, the gap that we thought we had because of your political affiliation or your ethnicity or your socioeconomic, whatever it is, it fades away. And all of a sudden now, Gary, you're a real human being. And we might think different. We might look different. We might be different, whatever it is, but we have a commonality now that kind of puts those other things to the side. So
I think that's a brilliant point. The loneliness epidemic, because you think about it, as you said, once to get rid of way to get rid of racism is to get to know someone from a different race. The way to get over misogyny is to actually get to know someone of a different sex and know them as a real live human being. The same thing with homophobia. Get to know someone, have them turn into a real live human being. We don't do that with politics. That's why I was saying it's the last bastion where we get to freely, openly hate. And there will be somebody who will cheer us on.
Right.
And that's why I said, because I know it's a very charged thing when I said it's political racism, because it is. It is such an uncomfortable word. But if you think about it, it's the last place where you can openly scorn and deride someone without fear of really anything other than lashback on social media, maybe. And that's scary. And instead of, because we want to get to livefaithfirst.org and the LRK is to take the time to get to know someone on the other side. And this leads me back to what we were saying earlier. And I literally, minutes before we sat down here to record, I went to lunch with my family, and my wife we started tangentially talking politics. And I felt like she felt I was disagreeing with her. And I'm going, this is not going the way I thought it was going. And this is the woman I love more than any human who walks on this earth. And you're like, wow, right? And I'm trying to find that. It is very hard to even discuss it amongst our family. And I think we both are of the same ilk. I think we both have very, I would say, compatible opinions on politics and stuff. But even then, it was hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. Yeah. Imagine trying to do that with a coworker who's really 2 cubicles down, and you know who they are, and you see them at parties, but that's scary.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It's just a challenge to navigate that on all relational levels. You know, I mean, the number of people that have broken relationship, it's 20% of the country broke relationship, 1 out of 6 in the 2016 election, broke relationship with a close friend or family member. I mean, that's the kind of division that we have allowed to creep in. I heard this stat not that long ago that Thanksgiving dinners coming up. We're a month away from Thanksgiving, or a little bit more, but a month from Thanksgiving, are 24 minutes shorter in election years. So we so dislike the other side that keeps showing up to our Thanksgiving dinners that when we're kind of just like decompressing from all of this, we just spend less time together. We're like, no, we're out this year. I'm leaving 24 minutes earlier than I did the year before. And in the past, some people aren't showing up. Like, I'm not going to be around a person who thinks that. I'm not going to be around a person who voted that way. I'm not going to be around a person. And I think, again, the challenge is we are so much more than our political opinions. Yes, they are important. I'm not saying they're not important, but I am not, like, my core definition is not my political affiliation. That is not who I am. Do I have political opinions? Absolutely. But are there other things about me way more than what color, what letter I'm choosing?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's true for everybody. That is true for everybody. We all are a lot more than our political opinions. And so that's, again, we have to have grace for people too, to allow somebody to, I don't think that way, and that's okay.
I think about how much less my life would be if I limited to myself. Okay, I'm not gonna associate with people of this race. I'm not gonna associate with people of this religion. I'm not gonna associate. I mean, I look at my life, and the Lord has blessed me with this rich, wonderful life. And it's because there's so much in it.
Yeah.
And I do my best to not look for reasons to limit myself. And that includes politics. And sometimes it's hard. I can't change them, but I can change the way I react. And that's the basis of LRK. Explain that if you would.
Yeah. Awesome. So LRK stands for love, respect, and kindness. And so we built a campaign. You can go to our website, mustdobetter.org. It's part of what Live Faith First does, but we kind of wanted a separate way to say, you know what, in this election season, we must do better. So mustdobetter.org. And what we're encouraging is love, respect, and kindness. What that means is no matter a person's political opinions, no matter their affiliations, their background, whatever it is, we need to treat one another with love, respect, and kindness. Everybody deserves that, whether or not you agree with them or whether or not you vehemently disagree with them. We still need to treat people with love, respect, and kindness. And so if you go to the website, again, mustdobetter.org, we have a pledge there. I'd encourage you all to go do that. There's a pledge that just says, during this political season, I'm going to choose to treat people with love, respect, and kindness. And what's interesting is when we ask somebody to do that, it's like, dude, I can't do that for 2 weeks. I can't do that for a day, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not letting anybody off the hook. On the other hand, you realize that in any given day, sometimes we're going to get it right and sometimes we're going to get it wrong. And so, in the morning you wake up and you're great with your family, but you hop in your car and you're flipping somebody off on the road, and then you kill it in the workplace. And then, at lunch, you're a numbskull, but by the time you get home and your daughter's hassling you and asking you for money, you handle that with all kinds of aplomb. Like, it's great. So, like, any given day, we might pull off LRK amazingly at one point and not on another. And the point is not, did I get an A+ on that assignment today? The point is, was that where I was aiming today? Was I aiming at love, respect, and kindness? Did I get it perfect? Outside of Jesus, nobody's going to get it perfect. Let's be real. Mm-hmm. But if we start moving that direction, if everybody started moving that direction every single day during this election season and after, it's an important concept beyond an election, our society would start being different. We would be treating one another differently than we are now. And so, mustdobetter.org, love, respect, and kindness. Love you guys to check it out. Take the pledge and join us there. And we have some other resources, so you can check that out too. But that's kind of the core of what we're trying to accomplish this election season.
Well, I love the approach when you find yourself in that position where a conversation is maybe not going the way you wanted it to. Literally minutes ago for me, the first thing to do is stop and pray.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. Think about what life would be like. And you and I are men of faith. But even if you just took the time, let's say that you haven't figured out a faith yet, taking the time to stop and truly meditate and truly take the moment to gather yourself and go, what am I doing here? I, let me throw in a plug for us. You talk to the Lord talks back.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily talk back right now with a voice out loud, but it's amazing what the Spirit will do for you.
Yeah.
Start there and then go forward.
And even if you find yourself ruminating about the other side, whether it's a political opponent that you actually have a face for that you dislike, or a party in general, or maybe a person in your life that like, they vote that way. I cannot stand that coworker. I cannot stand that family member. The power of just doing 30 seconds a day, thinking something positive about that person will begin to change your heart towards them. So if you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus told us to pray for your enemies. Right, and love those who persecute you. So if you're a follower of Jesus, that's what we do. But that concept of I'm going to choose to think positively about, I'm going to choose to think one positive thing. And if you can't come up with one positive thing, just say something like, you know what, I am thinking positive about, and just say those words and it's amazing if you make that a daily practice. You will start to soften towards that person. That doesn't mean you're agreeing with them now, but that rumination that's kind of maybe causing you some emotional stress, that will start to decline. And so just that practice of stopping, asking what we're doing, praying, Lord, help me right now, whatever it is, just having a positive thought towards somebody or praying specifically for that person. Lord, today I pray for that candidate. I can't stand them, and you know that. But Lord, I know you created them. Lord, I know you made them, and I don't know why you did. I don't have to understand why, but you did. And so I am praying for them today. And just that practice, again, if you believe in Jesus, you probably go the prayer route. If you don't, then just a positive thought towards. All of that helps our emotional life. And truly, part of what I want to do, LRK, is so that we can survive this season with our emotional health intact. Last election, 2020, depression went up 50%. Anxiety went up like 60 or 70%. Like this is what Americans experienced during the last election. So if we can find a way to like lower those numbers, those depression numbers, those anxiety numbers, those fear numbers, by doing just some healthy things around this, then, I think we're coming out winning. Even if we had an argument or two, we're coming out winning because we're in a better emotional and relational place.
Yeah, that's the key. And realize this too shall pass. No matter, I've said this before, what I know from my empirical evidence, what I know is the day after the election, what will happen is I will get up and I will take my children to school. I'll make them breakfast, I'll take them to school, and then I'll work. There won't be rioting in the streets, and there won't be, a mass craziness. Will there be pockets of people unhappy no matter who wins? Yes. But for the vast majority of us, and those people will choose to find the strife. The majority of us are just, as you said earlier, just want to get up. I want to make breakfast for my kids. I want to, not irk my partner. I want to do well at work. That will continue. That will be the same day after. And you remind yourself that, especially if you're a person of faith. And I know it's one of the things is study your Bible. It's amazing how much these thousands of year old words impact you when you sit back and start reading and seeing how it works today. It is amazing this week, because I have a Bible plan that I read. It's amazing how much it has spoken to me this week in ways that aren't comfortable for me, by the way.
Yes. A little refinement in your morning Bible reading. Yes, that's a regular occurrence around this house. And along those lines, the idea of gratitude is just so important because it is a blessing to be able to get up in the morning. It is a blessing to be able to take your kids to school. It is a blessing. There's so many good things in our life. And it's so easy to get focused on, well, this is broken and that's not working, and what's happening in that part of the world, and what's happening in Washington, D.C., and what's happening in our cities, and this, that, and crime, and all of these things. And all of those are there. I'm not saying put your head in the sand and pretend like it doesn't exist. But if that is our only focus, we get out of whack. And so I know there's kind of jokes going around, oh, gratitude, just have your gratitude journal. Well, you can go to mustdobetter.org, the LRK website, and we do have a gratitude journal for you. And the point isn't to take your mind off of the election. It's to put your mind on the things that are actually good that are happening in your life right now. And it's just so important for, again, our mental health, our emotional health, our relational health. We begin to be better to those around us because we're actually focused on like, wow, my wife is all right. My partner is okay. Like, oh, my daughter, yeah, she's, 19 and kind of 19-ish, but she's good people. Like, like I really like her a lot. I love her, And so you just putting those things on the forefront, even just to start your day, it sets you on a different path. And that doesn't mean you won't look at the news feed. That doesn't mean you won't pass the news, whatever it is, but you'll be in a different place because you have a different perspective on your day because you started there.
They have scientifically proven that if you are truly grateful, if you have a mindset of gratefulness, it is impossible to have anxiety.
Yeah.
That's not a philosophical thing.
Yeah.
That is a scientific thing.
Resilience truly is grateful, another aspect you get, right?
Yeah.
That I'm going to get up, I'm going to keep going. There's so many benefits. And you're absolutely right. It is a scientific fact. It's not some, yeah, this would be a fun exercise for you. We're just going to make something up for you to do in the morning. Like there is empirical evidence. So yeah.
I want to tell you why I am all in on Bison Junk. First and foremost, they are a full-service, eco-friendly junk removal company, but with this difference. They focus on recycling and donating usable goods. Their customer service sets them apart, and they pride themselves on their integrity. They'll show up when they say they will, and they'll do what they promise. If you have hard-to-remove items like hot tubs or large furniture, they figure it out so you don't have to. They want to be who you always come back to when it's time to declutter and organize your home or business. They're worth every penny at bisonjunk.com. Sterling Oak Cabinetry has one goal: to build the cabinets of your dreams. They literally specialize in custom cabinetry. No cookie cutter, everything looks the same stuff that you find at the big box stores. Your kitchen is the centerpiece of your home, and your home is your biggest investment. They can work with you or your designer to build just what you want with the materials and finish that you want. And because they're a brand new company, they'll be getting busier and busier, but if you order right now, they'll get your order to you in 6 to 8 weeks. In the world of cabinetry, that's blindingly fast. Contact Rob Scovman at RSKOVMAND at yahoo.com or go to sterlingoakcabinetry.com and get your dreams made reality tomorrow.
And be grateful that we live in a country where we still, we do have elections. And the majority of the world does not live with that. I mean, I was saying this to my son today, about, we were talking about some financial matters or something like that. Or spending too much on lunch at school, something like that. And I said, it's not that we're broke, but we have to pay attention to where our money goes.
Right.
And I said, but remember this, we live better than probably 80 to 90% of the world's population. And that's the majority of the people who in America,
right,
we live better than the majority of the world's population. And we should be thankful for that. We should be thankful that we live in this country, that for all the problems, we are a country that strives for better. And that's the beauty of what we have always done. We may not all agree on how to get there, but instead of ascribing evil, ascribe good intentions, even if you think they are misplaced. And there's some things that you go, who thought that was a good idea? Here's the truth. When I sit back, when we started this, said, if you'll question your own side, you'll find out people who are honest, when you say question your own side, you'll find out they agree with you. And they're on the other side. right? And you'll go, hey, does this seem weird to you? And they'll look around and go, oh yeah, that's completely weird. I don't know where that goes. And if you can start finding those common bonds, and now you actually get to talk to each other. You can sit back and go, here's this issue. What do you think? Well, what happened when that happened? What did you think? Yeah, I wasn't too happy about that. That was over. And now you find those common bonds, and that's all we're ever looking for is the common bonds.
Right. So important. So important. We say there's 3 stances as we enter these conversations. We say we enter open-handed, open-minded, open-hearted, then you open your mouth. So the idea of being open-handed is just this idea that go in with your truth, with your opinion, with your thought, with whatever it is, open-handedly. If you put your hands out in front of you, it's kind of like an offering to say, hey, this is what I think. I thought about it. I have an opinion about it, but I'm not going to be tight-fisted. When I go tight-fisted, I just want to fight with you. I'm just going to want to try to punch you in the face. But if I'm open-handed, I'll just say, I may not change my mind today, but I'm going to hold it loosely. Maybe I get something better because I talked to you today. The second is I got to be open-minded. What that means is we need to ask good questions to gain understanding. So there's 2 kind of stances. One is the investigator stance. Investigators ask good questions to find out what actually happened, ask good questions to find out understanding. When we do that, it literally switches our brain into investigator mode, which is very different from teacher mode because teachers teach, investigators ask questions, teachers teach, students learn. And so if I'm in teacher mode, well, then Gary, I'm going to tell you what to believe. I'm going to tell you why you should believe it. And if you don't believe it, well, you're just clearly, you haven't thought through it right because I have. And so I'm telling you why. And so when we enter it's teacher mode, our brain gets defensive. When we enter with investigator mode, our brain is more like, oh, why does this person think that way? How do they get here? What happened in their life that this is so important to them? So open-handed, open-minded, and then open-hearted. And that's the commonality that you were just talking about. Open-hearted to find commonality. And it can be as simple as we both think that immigration's a big issue in our country. We both agree that in our community, the unhoused population is a problem that needs to be fixed. Now, how we go about it might be different, but we are at least commonly agreeing, commonality, that is a problem in our community or in our society. And then after we've done that, now we can open our mouth. So we can now say, but we always do it with LRK, love, respect, and kindness. When we actually finally get to the place where like, let me tell you a little bit about what I think. And so I agree with you. Commonality is such an important part of how we navigate these conversations because we have to look for it. It's there. It's there. And when we find it, we got to call it out.
You said to me one time at breakfast, I remember you said you try to listen with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't always do it, but I'm always trying to. Yeah. Now, let's be clear. I fail probably more than I succeed, right? Because I have those beliefs mine too, of my own. But I have been trying to truly understand some things. And I remember having this conversation with somebody about this very contentious issue. And I still to this day cannot understand how their mind works. And when I asked the question, they were offended that I asked the question. They were like, how could you even ask me that question? And I was like, well, this is where I can't control their reaction. This is where I can only control mine.
Yep. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that there are people who are going to they're going to be offended. There's people who are going to be grumpy about it. There's people, whatever it might be. I did a radio interview and I told the story of a friend, and she was hanging out with one of her oldest friends, and she knew they were on opposite sides of the spectrum. And so my friend says to her friend, okay, you got to admit that at least what happened on January 6th was an affront to, peace and our country. And her friend replies, actually, I was there that day in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, which they both, to end that story, it ended well. They both and she said, my friend has she has this little giggle that is very, not off-putting. It's very, it kind of puts down the emotions. And so she giggled and we talked about her for a few minutes. And then we're like, I didn't realize we were on that opposite of the spectrum, but now I know. And they moved on and they had a great time together. But it was funny in this interview, I told that story and the radio DJ was offended. Like, whoa, wait. That morning, I got up and on the radio and I said, who could be out there doing this? And so she was getting worked up that I was telling a story about opposite sides there. And so her response was visceral to anybody who would have been in Washington, D.C. on January 6th at the Capitol, right? Like she just had that. And there's going to be people who are like that. Like you say an event or you say a person's name and there is a visceral response. And
which is why I have it so far. That whole thing I just told you about, that story about I thought we could agree on it. I won't bring it up. I won't say it because I know if you're listening, you will automatically stop hearing what we're saying and what we're trying to say.
Right. And so we get vague about it, right? Because we actually hope that you're going to keep listening to the end here because hopefully there's something worth listening to. But that's the thing. And there's going to be people who are going to close their ears immediately. And that isn't on you. But that also doesn't give you an excuse to blow them up, right? It's still an opportunity to say, look, I apologize for bringing it up. And let's either change the subject or maybe I should just walk away. What do you think is best right here? Because I think there are some circumstances that there really is no winning.
There isn't, and you have to be okay with that. And you have to, in my feelings, I have to, and what I'm truly trying to learn, what I'm praying about, one of the things I've really been bringing up in prayer is to adjust my anger, to adjust my my fury, if you will. And to go, it's not going to solve anything. Whether we agree or disagree, it's not going to change the issue between the two of us.
Yeah.
Right. And to let that go. And cast your vote. And then once the vote's over, be done with it.
Let's go on.
It's now, and Vickiston, that's the beautiful thing about democracy. Once the vote's, all right, it's okay. As you and I have said before, for all of those contentious elections, the ones that were most important, at some point, your side lost.
Yeah.
And you got to vote in the next election.
Right.
And maybe your side won. And the other side that lost, they got to vote the next election, right? So, and I truly believe that about this election. Why do I believe that? Because I have empirical evidence that I've seen it happen, and it's going to happen again. Your side it's good chance this is going to be a close election, in my opinion, very close. So it's going to be your side is a good chance of losing. Good chance of losing.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We keep using the word win and lose, and you win and lose an election. So that is absolutely right. And I think sometimes though we approach our conversations around subjects as win or lose conversations. And I think when we do that, I think we set ourselves up for failure. For the most part, life is not debate club. It's not like you're back in high school and you go to the debate club and they teach you like, okay, you have your opening arguments, then you have your 3 points, and then you have your closing arguments, and then the other team's going to get up, and then you get a rebuttal, and then there's a judge there who's going to say who won, right? Like that's not life most of the time. Most of the time, there's no judge there. Most of the time, it doesn't matter what your 3 points and your opening and closing arguments and rebuttal is, because that person's probably already made up their mind. And so if we enter into the conversation like it's debate club, you are going to get into your emotions are going to go up. You're going to be struggling and you're going to try to beat somebody. But if we just enter the conversation to have a conversation, to actually learn about somebody else's side. I mean, I have grown so much, not that I agree, but I've grown so much in having conversations with people who don't think like I do, who don't vote like I do, who don't I'm like, oh my goodness, I've never thought of it that way. I'm not sure I agree and want to take on that thinking, but that thought never crossed my mind. And I've learned something new today because of that. And so for me, I've also come to this realization recently. I've always said, I don't even like talking about politics. I grew up in a house where my dad loves politics. Like, this is his favorite. Like, every 4 years, this is his favorite. He just loves it, gets into it, has his opinions. And he and my brother-in-law would talk and talk and talk, and I would always leave the room. Not angrily, but just be like, man, I'd rather be somewhere else. This conversation is boring me. What I've come to find out is it's not actually that I dislike the conversation. It's that I dislike who I'm talking to. When I'm talking to people that want to argue with me, that's just not my personality. I prefer not to.
Yeah.
I prefer not to argue. But when I'm talking when I have those friends, and then I have the other friends who, they just want to talk. And so we just have a nice conversation. We don't agree on everything, but nobody's there trying to convince anybody. Nobody's there trying to get upset about anything. It's just, we're just chatting about a subject, a thought, a debate, but it's not a kind of it's just a conversation, right? And so anyway, I've found that I actually enjoy those conversations because I love just hearing what somebody else has to think. And I think I actually find that to be fun. And I think if we got to that curious place, it would help us with a lot of our polarization.
I love the words you used a while ago when you were saying we use the words win and lose, which is true. Elections are won or lost. But it's unless it was your name on the ballot, you didn't win or lose. It's like, I'm a big Alabama football fan, have been my entire life, right? So and it's so funny because people know I'm an Alabama football fan. When they lose a game, I get people who will call me to see if I'm okay, who will approach me with condolences. And I think my family will be the first to tell you, I don't get caught up in that. If they lose, well, doggone it, they lost. You know, my life doesn't change. The same way when they win, my life doesn't change.
Yeah.
And I can be a fan, a supporter, but it doesn't mean I lost. I wasn't on the field. I didn't make the game plan. I'm just a fan. And I think we forget, and we've all known those fans of sports teams who take it personally. And they say, we should have done this, and we got, no. And if you don't think everybody on that field was doing their best to win, you're kidding yourself.
Right.
Sports is a competition, right? And so they're trying to stay employed because there's a lot of money there.
Now you do have to admit, though, there are some games that sting a little bit more when they lose.
Maybe because they had usually it's because they were in a big chance to win, or recently, because everybody knows Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, and it was unexpected. And somebody was saying, oh, I'm just so sorry about that. I'm like, listen, if you'd have given me a choice between beating Georgia or losing to Vanderbilt, I would take losing to Vanderbilt 100% of the time.
Yes.
So even then, like when they lost in the national championship race last year, I was like, oh, well, I mean, the success, you're upset because of the success the team has had. Yeah. If they had not made the playoffs, it's just like if the Niners won 5 games this year and didn't make the playoffs, that's a different kind of than losing in overtime in the Super Bowl. And what you're upset because of the level of their success that you didn't think was completed.
Yeah.
And does that sting? Yeah, but until you really sit back and think about it, that's pretty cool. The majority of the players in the NFL never make it to a Super Bowl.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
So that's my point is the whole win and lose thing. You know, here's the truth. Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will lose. Their team will lose or win. I won't. You know?
Right. And we have to be, we learn on the playground, right? Don't be a sore loser. be a good winner. And I think that's kind of going to be an interesting time, interesting place we're going to be November 7th, November 8th, in kind of as we move through the aftermath of the election. It's like, don't hold it over anybody. It is what it is. And really, you have just as much chance of losing again in 4 years. And so
and you probably will.
you probably will.
And it's the old football coach adage. When you lose, say nothing. When you win, say less.
Yeah.
And that's it. Let's just get on with the business of running the country. Let's get on with the business of staying alive. Let's get on the business with loving each other and pulling for each other. And yes, honestly, praying for our leaders. I mean, because that's what Jesus said. That's what God said. I mean, if we've sat back and talked about, where do we, as you put it, where do we put our trust? Where do we put our trust?
Right.
And if you're a person of faith, I don't know of any faith that, besides ours, I don't know of any faith that says, well, you really need to worry about the government. So
right.
it's if you're looking at that, and if you're a person of faith, I tend to believe God has a plan for everything. So I think this is part of God's plan too, no matter which way it goes.
Yeah. It's but again, we find ourselves in just a really interesting place. We find ourselves in a very interesting place, and when I see stats about our country, actually, people want to get over the polarization. The numbers say 80%, 70% think that we can get past this.
Mm-hmm.
Want to be part of the solution. Want to help us move forward. Think it's important that we find a way to cross these divides. And so, what I find most interesting as we sit here in this kind of supercharged, polarized season, when most of us actually think it's harming the country, and we'd be willing to participate in bringing everybody together. And so, I'm not sure what that thing is going to be. I hope it's not another tragedy like we saw at 9/11, where like all of a sudden we kind of come together as a nation and there's kind of this pride around it again. But there will be an inflection point. There will be an inflection point where we finally say, you know what, we're just done with this. And it doesn't mean that everybody goes to the same side and say, we're all Republican, we're all Democrat, we're all independent. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that those definers will be less important than something greater than that. And, if you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus is that thing. But if you're not a follower of Jesus, there needs to be something that brings us together across those divides. And I think personally, it needs to be somewhere around our humanness, the fact that we're all human who deserve respect, that I believe we're all created in God's image. And so that gives us this thing that everybody is walking around as an image bearer of God that deserves respect. If you don't believe in Jesus, that's fine. I think you would still agree that most humans deserve respect, whether or not you agree with them. And so it's either that, or maybe we're going to come together and just be Americans, and we'll let that be. I have a feeling that day is kind of past us. That was great, through World War I, World War II, and post that. So I'm hoping that we find a way to come together around something that just helps us bridge that divide, so these elections aren't so emotional. Again, not that we agree on everything now, because that will never happen, but that it's not driven by these negative, contentious, contemptuous emotions that we have towards one another.
Well said. And here's a fun little thought experiment before we wrap this thing up. There's a report out of England, and supposedly within the next few weeks, maybe by the time of the election, there may be proof of an alien civilization, that we may have found radio waves and stuff like that could only be made by a mind. Imagine how that would change everything. It would change everything. you know, and it would instantaneously make an election not important. It would become the third story every day, right? It wouldn't be the first story, maybe the sixth story.
Right.
So it was a very interesting thought experiment of the stuff that we truly think that is important, which is literally hanging by a thread.
Right.
We're one little discovery away of going, whoa. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I'm just saying it's a fun thought experiment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we come together around tragedies, which again, you know, we always say when we go to a family funeral, oh man, I haven't seen you since the last family funeral. Man, we should get together more often, right? And then we go back to our lives again. And when there's an earthquake, when there's a hurricane, when there's a tornado, when there's a fire, the things that we experience, we come together around that. Nobody is asking, hey, would you please pin on your political affiliation before I come to your house and help? Like, we don't do that. No. You're a neighbor of mine, and I need to come alongside you. We need to help one another. Clearly, our houses are destroyed. So, hey, we have that in common. Let's figure out how to band together. And I don't wish that on America, that we find that way to come together, but it will be something galvanizing. We'll see. Maybe it's aliens. I don't know, but
it's a fun experiment. Like I said, a fun thought experiment.
I can be sucked up into a good conspiracy theory. I try not to on the regular, but every once in a while, I'm like, oh, there's enough truth to that. I don't know. We'll see.
You know, that's what I was thinking when I read that. I'm like, my goodness, would that not change the election? Would it just take all the steam out of everybody? Yeah. Right? I mean, it would, and that'd be just kind of fun. Like, okay, there you go. Are they discovered a way of cold fusion, right? Or limitless power from water, right? From salt water. Think about how that would change everything. Everything. Everybody be like, oh, well, that's not as important as we thought it was. So. Mustdobetter.org. Take the pledge. Check out Live Faith First and the Live Faith First podcast. Elliot's a host of it. It is wonderful. I think I learned something from every episode and it helps me take a look at me. Helps me take a look at my side. So, my friend, thank you. Let's sit down with our calendars and figure out our next breakfast.
All right. I like it. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate the time.